All right. So this info session is for this upcoming exam, obviously, and we're going to be having it March 23rd of this year. I'm super excited that it's 2013 because 13 is the lucky number for me. Why do we actually have an exam? The college has to hold an annual jurisprudence exam or professional exam that everybody can write, and not just new applicants, but people that are looking to change their membership status. Now, typically we've been having 2 exams in the past, but we kind of have a cutoff number. If we don't have at least 7 people, then we're going to postpone an exam. Now, right now, that's not a worry for you guys. There's like 18 people registered to write this exam, so I'm sure we'll meet the minimum. But it is something you should consider if you're looking to delay to the fall, that we may not have enough people to have the second exam in the fall. So the spring exam is usually the one with a higher number, and you might be restricted to not writing until next spring. Now, the exam is not intended to restrict your membership or to prevent you from joining college. It's just a way for you to demonstrate your professional knowledge, and you know, you kind of get to show that you're familiar with provincial legislation, federal legislation as it pertains to forestry. So page 3 of the PowerPoint. Now, there's a little bit of a confusion that you're going to encounter here right away, so I will try not to overly confuse you. If you look on the CAPFT website, you're going to see that there's a whole bunch of registers that are not on the Queen's Printer version of the RFP register, or RPFT, I guess, register. And one of those is the Registered Forest Technologist. So this category was voted in by members of the college, and it allows you to become a member of the college, full practicing member, without having to write the professional exam. So, for instance, if you were doing timber scaling or regen surveys or something like that, I mean, that's still forestry activity. You're still mandatory registration with the college, but you don't have to sign off on anything, so you may choose that you don't need to write your professional exam and get that extended scope of practice. So that's one of the things you're not going to see as a question on the exam. Anywhere where there's conflicting information between 2 different documents, we just don't test on that kind of stuff, because there's basically 2 official versions right now. So a lot of you are RFTs, and it's good for you to have an understanding of that, but it's not something you'll see on the exam. Okay? Now, once you pass the exam, whether you're an FIT or an RFT, you will and you have your 24-month post-work experience, then you're going to be entered onto the Registered Professional Forest Technologist Register, so the RPFT, and that means you can use that title, new signing authority, and for a lot of us, and that was a condition of our employment. So when we were hired, we not only had to be eligible for membership, but we also had to have signing authority. Okay. So just some details about the exam. No matter where you write, we're going to make sure that it starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. So if you're writing in Edmonton, it'll probably be at 8, or if it's somewhere else, then we just have to make sure we all have the same write time so that everybody is in the exam at the same time. There's a map at the end, if you haven't been to the NAIT campus, on how to access the room where we have the exam. And of course, secondary locations, we'll make sure that you get lots of communication about where that's going to be and how you access the building, who your proctor is, and all of that fun stuff. So in the next couple of days, you guys should be expecting to receive an email from the college, and that's going to ask you about your preferred location, and then we'll look at setting you up with a proctor if you don't want to write in Edmonton. Okay. So the objective of this session here today is to just give you information about the exam. So what kinds of questions that you're going to expect to see, how long it should take you to study, how long it's going to take you to write the exam, you know, where to focus your studying, and you know, just keeping you on track for all of your study timeline. So right now, I think you guys have 9 weeks, just a little over that for the exam. If you haven't started studying already, yes, you could successfully pass the exam, but you definitely have to keep yourself focused, and hopefully we can help you out with that. So don't lose hope if you haven't started studying already, but you definitely have to put in lots of effort from here on out. So this PowerPoint, if you open up the PDF copy that you got in your email, you'll notice this little book symbol on the right-hand side. Sorry, it's page 6 of the PowerPoint there. If you click on the book when you have it open on your computer, it will link you through to an associated web page or a PDF document. So those are pretty helpful just for short tracking you through it. Sorry, just looking at the exam itself. Now the exam is for you to demonstrate your knowledge, and we understand that you don't know 100% of all things in forestry. It's a really, really broad scope. So what we do is we have 16 different questions on the exam. You are going to answer 10 of the 16. The first 2 are mandatory, and then there's 14 more questions, and you're going to choose 8 of those 14. So in total, you'll only answer 10 questions of the 16. Choose questions that you studied lots on or you're familiar with through your practice at work or maybe at school or something like that. But we're going to pick the questions from a variety of areas just to make sure that everybody has a chance to demonstrate their knowledge. So you'll probably see a fire question, and you're going to see a land use question, and those kinds of things. Now, each question is worth 10 marks, but each question is going to be broken down into a number of points. Now, we don't have long answer questions. They're really, really hard to mark, and they take a long time to write, and sometimes we can get baffled. So most of the time you'll see that the questions are composed of, you know, short answer, fill in the blank, true and false, matching, multiple choice, everybody's favorite, and then each of those is going to be worth a variety of points. Now, you're going to look on your exam in the left-hand margin, and that's going to tell you how much each portion of the question is worth. So, you know, don't spend all your time focusing on something that's only worth 1 point. You know, really put your effort into something that's worth 4 points. I don't think we have anything that's worth more than 4 points. So you're writing 10 questions. Each question is worth 10 marks. That's a total of 100 marks. So if you get 65%, then that's the successful pass line for the exam. It is just a pass-fail. Your mark doesn't really matter. So, I mean, while I encourage you to study 100% worth, do keep in mind that it's 65 to pass, so don't get yourself too stressed out about this. All right, page 8 of the PowerPoint. So like I was saying, the questions are true, false, multiple choice, short answer, checking, matching. There's some fill in the tables type thing as well. And the questions are composed by different people, so they'll look and read a little bit differently. Now the 2 mandatory questions, questions 1 and question 2, pertain to the college. And this is pretty much what Chanel's study session is going to focus on. It's also the first documents that you're going to receive through the study timeline. So if you know the stuff inside and out, that's going to be great for your membership with the college. It also means you're going to have 20 of the 65 points that you need on your exam. So it's a big chunk. It's almost a third, right? So we're going to look at bylaws, the code of conduct, your duties as a member of the college, to the public, to other members, and to yourself, and to the college. We'll also look at the continuing competency program. So as you guys know, you have to keep studying, and there's a variety of ways to do that. One of the things I want to note with that is that you guys get lots and lots of study hours or continuing competency hours for your exam preparation. You're going to get to claim the number of hours it takes you to write the exam for the year that you pass it. You'll also get to claim the number of hours that you studied, I think up to 25, and for attending the study sessions, and if you're going to prepare and present a study session as well, then you'll get hours for that. So if you guys are keeping track of this, making sure that you enter them in on your online recorder there, you should be able to almost reach your first year's requirements for continuing competency hours. So it puts you way ahead. It was free, you had to do it anyways, right? The question is also going to look at membership requirements. So, you know, if you have to be a Canadian citizen or in Alberta, you know, if you reside in Alberta or something like that. So we'll be kind of taking a look at those today as well, just to make sure that you have a good understanding of college. The remaining questions are taken from a lot of different areas. So the tenure system, the operating ground rules. Now, operating ground rules is one of those difficult ones with the studying, and you're going to notice that in the links and stuff, the ground rules are from, I can't even remember how old they are, like 2003 or the 90s or something like that. That's because ground rules are FMA specific. We're not going to test that specifically. So we're not going to be looking to see like what LPAC does or something like that. We're just looking to see ground rules in general. So that's why we reference that ancient document. It's the, everybody has the same stuff in common with that. Now the region surveys with the RSA standard there, that's I guess fairly new material in the last few years here. So good questions from that. The complaints process for the college as well, which is quite extensive, and you should be familiar with it. Also, incident command system for all you fire people. There's that, wildfire prevention. There's also a wildlife question. I think it focuses mainly on caribou. And the Alberta Land Stewardship Act, so looking to see how many changes that made. It was a pretty major sweeping act for us. The Forest Protection and Prairie Acts and Regulations, oil and gas exploration, industrial development. So looking at, you know, for people that are doing land use type stuff, they might be more familiar with those questions. Also it should be Forest Act, plural. And the timber regulations, watershed management. And if you guys have been following the news, you've probably heard about all these changes to the Navigable Waters Protection Act. So there's a nice piece of federal legislation that also covers some watershed type stuff. That is testable as well. Range management for any of you green zone people, and, or sorry, white zone people. Biodiversity, mountain pine beetle is a pretty popular question as well. So you can see there's lots of different areas for you to be focusing your studies on. So don't just pick, you know, 8 of these areas and focus on that, because you might not necessarily see them on your exam, right? There's only 14 questions that can be taken from these subject materials. So make sure you guys are picking 10, 12 things that you are very familiar with that you're going to be able to write that questions. Page 11 of the PowerPoint. So if you go to the college's website, link is here at the bottom of the page, and you use the drop-down menu to go to the professional exam. You're going to find the reading list. So that's all of the documents there that that we use as references. Now you'll also find most of those links in this PowerPoint as well, and in the study documents as they come out. So a lot of them are from the Queen's Printer, or we use the ESRD website for lots of references. So you'll find all of those in the reading list. Now, the Queen's Printer is usually the one that is the worst about they update their links. So if a link is broken, firstly, please let us know. And secondly, we'll try to find you the updated link there as well. But sometimes you'll just have to search for them yourself. So, you know, just go to the Queen's Printer website and search Forest Act. You'll find it. You'll be fine. The ESRD, when they did their name change, they didn't change any of their web pages. So right now everything, or nothing changed. But again, sometimes links get broken there when they go through those major structural changes. But let us know. We'll get it fixed. Okay. There's a link here on page 12 for the main manuals page that's used by SRD there. Just a helpful math page with lots and lots of information on it. Okay. So like I was saying, choose at least 10 areas from the reading list that you're going to focus your studies on. And of course, the mandatory materials as well. So you're going to be looking at 12 to 14 different areas of study. So choose things that you're familiar with and make sure you look at all of the associated documents in the reading list. Download the appropriate study document and the summary document and answer the sample questions. And if you can answer them without referring to the literature, you're probably good to go on the exam question. What else can we say about that? Yeah, I think it works. Okay. So as I was saying with the ground rules, in the case where the material is FMA or area sensitive, so the specifics on the material are not going to be tested. Like, we're not going to look for, how much growth a tree has to have or something like that. We're just looking at the general intent of the material. So when you're looking at an act, how does it relate to the regulations? How are they empowered? How do they come to force? In what situation do you actually have to reference that material? And again, that's why you see that some of the documents are really, really out of date on the reading list. So try not to get hung up on that. Just look for the content of the information. So if you didn't get the information from the website or from the study documents that you'll receive from me, then we're not going to test on that stuff. So you're going to see some differences, some confusion, that kind of stuff. Don't worry about it. We're not that picky. Okay? And you'll find stuff that's not current in the study materials. If you find any discrepancies, please forward them to me, and I'll try to fix them up and make sure that our questions don't cover that. Okay. Again, you're not going to be tested in your ability to regurgitate material, so it's not going to say, what is the bylaw, blah, 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 or reference a section or something like that. You're going to need to give a reasonable interpretation of the understanding and intent and application of the material. Okay. Now, the questions are written so that there's not a lot of room for the old baffling with bullshit. So you do actually need to know your material, but you don't have to regurgitate it word for word. Now, you guys are going to be writing your exam on March 23rd, which is a Saturday. I think it usually takes about 3 hours for people to write. You do have up to 4 hours for completing your exam. The exam marking committee will actually get together either Saturday evening or Sunday, hopefully, and we'll mark your exams all together. So the committee is a whole bunch of different RPFTs from a bunch of different backgrounds. So we've got some government people, some industry people, a couple of instructors, that kind of stuff. They have an exam marking key. They use that to mark your exam. And of course, they bring their personal expertise in where your answer and the exam may not line up perfectly, I guess. So for example, I myself don't know anything about fire. So if I was writing or marking someone's exam and they had written the fire questions, if I had any issues with how a question is answered, then I would just talk to the person that's most familiar with fire and we'd get that clarified. So the exam is usually marked by 2 or 3 people. It takes that many people to get through the exam and make sure that it's marked by someone who knows what they're marking. Yeah. Usually we get the exam results to you the next day, but we do ask for a week or 2 with your patients to make sure that we've got everything put together. Now, it's 65 to pass. So if you get 65 or more, that's yay. We just write you in the exam sheet and you receive your pass mark. If you get anywhere between, let's say, 58 and 65, then we have an entire another person, go through your exam and mark it again. We want to make sure that we didn't miss anything. We give you as many marks as possible. We're really not interested in failing you. So if you're, 63, 64 marks, we're going to comb through there and make sure that we can't make that to 65. We really work hard to make sure that you guys pass. Okay. If you do have a dispute with your exam, if you don't agree with the mark that you've been given, something like that, all you have to do is request a review, and you can. We'll just set you up with one of the members of the exam committee. They'll go through the exam with you and the answer key and let you know what areas that we disagree on. Okay. All right. Now, if you don't successfully pass the exam, then you'll have 2 opportunities to rewrite the exam. If you don't successfully complete it after the 3rd writing, then you'll have to do additional tutoring and mentoring before you're allowed to write it again. Okay. So we want to make sure that you get through, and I know that this exam is very, very stressful for everybody. I remember when I wrote it myself, so that can definitely lead to a lot of pre-exam stress, during exam stress, and that might mean that you're not performing as well as you hope to. So we'll look for other methods to get you through the exam and demonstrate your knowledge. I'm going to take a wee sip of tea here. Now we'll start talking about CAPFP. So remember, this is the first 2 questions. And also there is the complaints process. That's part of the I can't remember what they're called, the non-mandatory questions. Potentially get 30 marks, so that's 20 for sure. So always good to know what the whole professional thing is, what it actually means to us. In Alberta, professionalism is highly correlated with public, so responsibilities of the public, and just making sure that we protect the public resource, because the forestry is owned by, or the forest is owned by the public. So professionalism definitely plays a big role in maintaining that resource. Okay. Now, Alberta is kind of unique. The other provinces are catching up a little bit with it as well. But in Alberta, there's a provincial statute, and it was passed by the legislature, so that it formed the college and delegated self-governance responsibilities to the profession. So it actually said, instead of us overviewing you, we're going to set up an independent body, and they're going to overview you. You have to be a member of this body if you're working in that profession, and they're the ones that are going to make sure that you're held accountable. So it actually established that public accountability, and it's granted when public interest is served. So for us, it gives us a lot of market advantage. Like I was saying, it might be a condition of your employment to be a member of the college, or to actually be an RPFT and with rights to sign off. So it's good for us, it's good for the public, it's good for the government, just by covering off a number of aspects there. Page 22 of the PowerPoint. With the responsibilities of the profession, obviously we had to establish credible registration requirements, so they set out some educational benchmarks, which right now is NAET. Also looking at experience, and we have to have 24 months postgraduate work experience. Also looking for the continuing competency program to be set up. How are you going to make sure that you're still studying, still learning, and setting up a complaint investigation process. Sorry, I'm just speaking. I don't know why. So it will also formalize the disciplinary process if you're not acting professionally, or somebody believes you're not acting professionally. They can bring you before the complaints committee, and we'll see if that's needed. We set out a code of ethics and a code of conduct, and we'll be talking a lot about those because they kind of set out like how you're supposed to act as a member of the college there. Oh, and sorry, it also looks at the standards of practice So what can you do as an RPF, RPFD, all that kind of stuff. So the Regulated Forestry Profession Act is the one that established the two colleges, so the College of Alberta Professional Forest Technologists, us, and the College of Alberta Professional Foresters. So the difference, of course, between those two is the education. So technologist is typically a 2-year diploma, and foresters is a 4 or 5-year degree, right? Now, there's also 3 regulations under the RFPA. So the Registered Forest Professional Forest Technologist Regulation, that's the one that specifically refers to CAPFT. And then, of course, there's one for the foresters as well, and there's an expenses and review fees regulation. So right now, if you were to go and download that Registered Professional Forest Technologist Regulation, it's going to talk about the membership categories, and that's where you're not going to see, you know, FIT and that kind of stuff. Yes, FTT. So the way we'll look at it, just for the purpose of this presentation, is we'll be using the version from the CAPFT website. Oh, and just in case you're curious as to why these two things are conflicting, it is because we have not had our changes to the regs reviewed before legislature, so they just haven't been updated in an official sense. We use them, but we're not officially using them. So as a member, a regulated member of the college, you have right to title. So after you get your 24 months postgraduate work experience and you pass your exam, you're going to be an RPFT, okay? Right now, you might be an RFT or an FTT, just depending on your experience. If you look at the way the college is set up, there's a ton of public accountability. So we have to have a certain number of public members on our council, and if we have any hearings tribunals, we have to have members of the public there as well. And of course, all the hearings are open to the public. So it's an open concept organization, making sure that we do maintain that accountability. And there's a lot of emphasis on competence. So setting up those educational benchmarks, looking at, you know, what can transfer in, how do you transfer out as a professional? Like if you're going to go work in BC, can you still have to sign off, that kind of stuff. And the continuing competency program as well. So making sure that you maintain and you know, keep growing in your forestry education. Now, do note that mandatory registration is out there, and it's just kind of an interesting thing for you guys to think about. If you are a member of the college and you know that someone else is supposed to be a member of the college and they're not, a complaint could actually be brought against you. Okay? So it's kind of that whole making sure that we hold each other accountable as well. So if you have to be a member, then somebody else doing the same job also has to be a member. Okay? Some more key principles are the RFPA on page 25. So the complaint process, you know, if you're a member of the public or an employer or something like that, how do you make a complaint about a member of the college? Where does that complaint go, and what process does it go through? And also the peer review with that as well. It set out the code of ethics and the code of conduct, and we'll run over the college's website here in a minute and take a look at those. It set out how practice permits were going to be issued, if there's going to be conditions placed on your practice permit, maybe based on the education or experience that you have or something like that. Now, do recall that the RFPA is a unique piece of legislation in Alberta. The Alberta part is unique. We don't see this in other provinces because it actually makes foresters and forest technologists equal in professional status. So if you look at a job posting nowadays, they're going to say you either have to be a member of CAPFT or CAPF, right? Now that doesn't necessarily mean that foresters and forest technologists have the exact same jobs or can do the exact same things. It just means that if you have the experience, you can actually do the same thing, right? So not just based on education, but experience as well. And we're going to take a look at how that works with some specifics a little bit later on here. Okay. Oh, sorry, it's right here. So that's Annex 2 of the Alberta Forest Management Planning Standards. There's a link here on the bottom of page 26. So it actually looks at like why an RFP would validate something and then specifies what's actually needed for a variety of documents. So when we submit a document to the government, you know, who has to sign off on it? You know, do they just get it in there for approval, or does it have to be appraised, or is it just accepted? Okay. So I'm just going to click on this and run over to the internet for a second here. So this is the Regulated Forestry Professionals page on ESRD's website here. And if you take a look under Alberta Forest Management Planning Standards, you can see this full implementation of Annex 2. So if you click on that, you get this wonderful, huge document. I have just quickly zoomed myself down to page 79 here, and this is Annex 2. So it looks at what a professional actually does with documentation. So we call it validation, right? And when you submit something to the government, lots of times it has to be validated. You're going to either do that by signing it with your title and registration number, or using your stamp that's provided by the college and signing in the blank on the stamp, or if there's another approved mechanism. So probably someday we'll get into e-submissions and stuff, so we'll submit something electronically, and we'll have a method for validating that as well. So the purpose of the validation is just to make sure that the document was in fact accurate and was overviewed by a professional, that the project was overviewed by a professional as well. And that just, you know, it takes a step out of it for people. So as long as you say it's good, then everybody gets to agree that it's good. So it talks about approval, appraisal, and acceptance. That'll make more sense as we look below here. Kind of divided it out into 3 areas: the forest management plans, annual operating plans, and harvesting and reforestation activities. So for example, if you are doing timber scaling, timber falls into different populations, and each population you have to submit a piece of paper called a TM-262. You, the industry person, submits it, the government reviews it, they stamp and sign it as well, and then it becomes an official document. So that's what appraisal means. Okay? So interaction from both the submitter and the submittee. Okay? And this is really, really specific about what our RFP can actually do, but as long as you have the education and the experience, then you get to do any of these things as an RPF or an RPFE. Okay. There's other things, of course. This is just one really specific piece. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation here, page 27. Always a good idea to know the vision and the mission statement of the college. So our vision is forested land managed by professionals who care. You can see that on lots and lots of college stuff. And our mission statement is the College of Alberta Professional Forest Technologists will promote the professional management of all forested land in the province of Alberta. Okay. The college has some main objectives. Obviously, we want to promote, encourage, and affect education and training of the membership. So we have a member of the college that sits on the NATE advisory board and says, hey, what people need to learn to go when they go to NATE. We also try to make sure that members of the college are recognized by the public and by other members of industry as being professionals and what they can actually do. And of course, we try to keep the, the spirit alive with the people in the current industry. So good ways to do that is attending Bowl of the Woods, the old NATE thing that goes on there, or the college's annual general meeting, which is in April. Also want to say with that, if you successfully pass your exam, we definitely want to see you, well, whether you pass or not, sorry, we would like to see everyone at the annual general meeting. It it's really, really a fun time. You get to do lots of networking and see the people you went to school with and stuff. The wonderful thing about it too is that lots of employers are going to pick up the tab for you to go, and you're going to get some continuing competency hours. So keep that in mind, put it on your calendar when you get to see it. All right. Further objectives are to prevent a unified voice in the pursuit of professional conduct, provide opportunities for the gathering of members, and of course keep things affordable. So making sure that we can actually afford to do our continuing competency activities and that kind of stuff. One of the big things with the college is providing a voice within government as well. So if we, you know, as foresters feel strongly about something, we can take that to our council, and our council will take that to government as well. So we, you know, looking at the whole Bill C-45 there with changes to the Navigable Waters Protection Act, that's major impact on forestry. If we don't agree with how it's working out, then the college can represent us. Now, the way the college is structured is that we have 3 people that kind of have the president position. So when a person is elected into this, they will actually serve a 3-year term. The first one is going to be as the vice president, and the second one will be as the president, and the 3rd year is going to be as the past president. So they, you know, they have kind of a mentoring process that's maintained through that 3-year timeline. There are 7 other directors or counselors that are on the council as well, and they're 2-year terms. They are usually more specific areas. So I'm one of them, the exam director. There's membership director, complaints director, finance director, that kind of stuff. So looking at really specific areas there. We have 3 public members on our council as well. And they come to our council meetings and, you know, our major events there to provide a voice for the public. And we've got a couple of non-voting members. The NAIT representative would be one of those. Okay. Now, underneath the council, we have various committees. So we have an exam marking committee. That would be an example of a committee. Continuing competency committee, membership committee, things like that. So lots of ways to get involved in the college there. Now, the members of the council and the members of the committees are volunteers from the membership. We do have 2 full-time employees. So Chanel is the executive director and registrar for the college, and Myra, if you talk to her, is the executive assistant. I'm not sure if Myra is logged in with us today, but pleasant people if you get to talk to them on the phone or see them at all. And they represent us full-time, represent the college, make sure all our membership is going through, and deal with all the websites and that kind of stuff. Okay, so good resources there. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, registration is mandatory for anybody that meets the educational requirements, so the NAIT Forest Technology, and they have to be practicing forestry in Alberta on public land. Now, there are some exceptions to this. If they're a regulated member of another college, they may fall under that, like CAPF. Or if they're a student in the regulated profession, they may have student membership. Or if they are under another statute, like AFIT, something like that, would work out. Okay, so pretty much everybody that went to NAIT Forest Technology is going to have to be a member of CAPFT, pretty much. All right. Now, there are regulated members and non-regulated members. And the big thing with that is just whether you're meeting your registration requirements. So you have your forest technology diploma or, you know, the NAIT equivalent there. Are you practicing forestry on public land? Are you a Canadian citizen? And are you of good character and reputation? If the answer to those is yes, then you're going to be on the regulated members list. The non-regulated members are usually people that are non-practicing. So whether that's because they're a student or they are, let's say, on sabbatical or maternity leave or something like that, they could become a non-practicing member. And of course, the associate members as well. So that's less than 2 years of forestry education, so the FTTs. Now, if you're a non-regulated member, you're going to go on to One Register. So those are the students, the associates, the non-practicing, and the honorary members there. If you are a regulated member, you're going to be entered onto one of the 4 registers. Sorry. So the Registered Professional Forest Technologist Register, RPFT, the Registered Forest Technologist Register, RFT, the Temporary Register, or the Forest Technologist and Training Register. Okay. Now, if you're going to be put on the Registered Professional Forest Technologist Register, sorry, which words here, then you have to meet all of those registration requirements. You have to have passed the exam. Once you do that, then you're given right to use the title RPFT. You'll be given your seal, and you'll be eligible for professional sign-off. Right? Now, you will have to make sure that you submit an annual practice permit application, and bring the date back. Maybe Chanel, can you? I think we just changed the date for that, didn't we? For our annual practice permits submission there, it's like November or something like that now. Sorry, we'll make sure that's cleared up for you. Now, on your annual practice permit, you might have conditions imposed. Oh, good, November 30th. Yay, I was right. So if you, I don't have scope of practice in a certain area, it may limit you in what you're allowed to do with your professional sign-off. Janelle is going to be able to elaborate on that more with her study session there. Okay. Now, for those of us that are using our smartphones and Outlook and stuff like that, I really, really recommend that you throw yourself in a reminder that you don't forget to do that annual practice permit application. Right now, you can do it online, so it takes, I don't know, 5 minutes or something like that. But for now, until you finish your career in forestry, you're going to have to do that. So throw yourself in a reminder at the beginning of October that you know, get that done, get that fee paid, and make sure that you're good to good for your professional sign-off there. Okay. Something I wanted to mention about that as well. Yeah, I'll think of it later. Page 35, the Registered Forest Technologist Register. Again, you're not going to see this in the Queen's printer, just on the CAPFT website. So this is a person that is either transferring full professional forest technologists from another organization. So let's say you work in BC, that has their 24 months of postgraduate work experience and satisfies the other memberships of requirements of membership, except for having passed the professional exam. So like I was saying, if you went to school and you've been working for 3 years or something like that, and you don't need to write the professional exam, you can just hang out on the Registered Forest Technologist Register. Now, if you're on this register, you have to sign a declaration stating that you will become familiar with the applicable Alberta legislation, and you can't practice outside of your area of knowledge. That's really, really important for people that are coming in from other provinces and may not be familiar with our legislation here. Okay. Now, if you're on the RFT register, then you can choose to challenge the exam, and you're not eligible for professional sign-off. So you can't take that TM262 and sign it off. It has to be done by an RPFT. Okay. You do have the right to use the professional title RFT, and of course you'll be issued an annual practice permit that will state what you can do. Now, if you're on the temporary register, usually that's people that reside outside of Alberta. They meet, other membership requirements there, except for the residency, and they're just working inside of Alberta. So I'm from Fort McMurray. We get lots and lots of people who are brought in on contract. They still have to become members of the college, even if they're only working for 3 months or something like that, just to make sure that we've got that public accountability as well. Right? So you can hang out on the temporary register for 12 months, and I'm not even really sure what happens if you go over 12 months. Maybe you have to change your primary residence or something like that. You still get an annual practice permit, and there may be conditions on that as well. You get to use the RFT title as well, and you're not eligible for professional sign-off. All right. The page 37, Forest Technologist in Training Register. So that might be some of you as well. This means you satisfy the requirements of membership, except for you haven't passed the exam and you don't have your 24 months of postgraduate work experience. So you can stay on this exam for up to 24 months, or until your 24 months of postgraduate work experience is confirmed. Then you move over to the RFT register. So this is kind of a temporary one here. Still get a valid practice permit. You get to use the title FTT or Forest Technologist in Training. You're not eligible for sign-off, and you get to challenge the exam. Okay. So on page 38, we're looking at CAPFT's Code of Ethics. So the Code of Ethics are Article 9 of the CAPFT bylaws. We're going to be running over to CAPFT's webpage here in a second to take a look at it. This is the guiding principles of membership. So it outlines your duties as a college member, your duties to the public, and of course your duties to your employer or your client. So confidentiality and those kinds of things. Definitely you guys need to be familiar with this, because if you violate it, then big complaints, could lose your professional status, not allowed to work in Alberta anymore, bad. Okay, so I'm just going to click on the link here. We'll head over to CAPFT's website. So if you're going here yourself, you just go to CAPFT's website and Regulating the Profession bylaws. Okay, and we're going to click on Article 9 for ethics. And you can see that it's outlined in beautiful English. I love it. So duties of college members, duties to the public, duties to an employer or client. Definitely you guys want to be familiar with this. So definitely a good page to bookmark. Know it, not just for the exam, but because you're going to need it for your professionalism. Great. Going back to the PowerPoint here. Now, this part is empowered by Part 8 of the Regulated Forestry Profession Act that refers to regulations, bylaws, code of ethics, and standards of practice. So we're always talking about, you know, where we actually get the authority to enforce these things. Well, that's where it is. All right, pardon me. Now the code of conduct elaborates on the ethics, so it breaks them down into commentary, okay, more plain English there, and the standards of practice, so how you actually do that. So we'll go back and take a look at some examples here. Okay, so here's our beautiful code of conduct. There's some definitions in there. Look, practice of forestry. Everybody remembers that. Oh, I don't know, I guess you guys could be new. If you didn't have Thor, he was like a huge proponent of the knowing the definition of the practice of forestry. I had a copy of it glued to my forehead for all 2 years I was at NAEP. Okay, so if we take a look at this, it says, you know, what are your duties as a regulated member? So if we, Ethic 1A is maintaining the integrity of the public resource. So it means as a member of the college, you have to maintain the integrity of the forest resource and perpetuate its productive capacity. So it kind of breaks it out into a nice plain English statement there and talks about your standards of practice. So how are you going to actually do this? So you have to consider the forest resources for their inherent value. You have to make management decisions that are in best interest of maintaining that value. You have to use sound ecological principles, make good management decisions, and examine any potential impacts. Oh, I'm sorry. Chanel is just telling me that new members should have received a booklet of the Code of Conduct in their welcome package. So, yay for you. Definitely get to read here. Okay, so this just kind of elaborates more on those ethics, and again, you should be familiar with them not only for the exam, but for your professionalism. Okay. The college also has a complaint process set out. It is in a beautiful manual, and We've got a link to it there. This is not a mandatory question. It's one of the 14 optional questions there. So if you're familiar with this, it might be an area that you'd like to study on. So it outlines the responsibilities of the complaints director. It says who can file a complaint, how they can file the complaint, what the timeline of the process is, so how long until the college has to respond, until the, the complainant has to have a response, something like that. Also sets out the investigation process, who's allowed to be an investigator, what types of things are they looking for, or do they make decisions, that kind of stuff. And this is under the RFPA Act. Part 4 and divisions 1 through 6, I guess. So we'll just navigate over there real quickly. Now this is a PDF document. So if you're not able to download it, please just send me an email and I'll just send you a copy of it. We have any elevator music? Here we go. So our complaints manual, and I don't know why the title page didn't load, but this is what it is. So it's broken down into 3 parts: investigations, hearings, and decisions. And it's still loading. Must be because I have this presentation going on here. So it was actually put together by a lawyer, I think, just to make sure that we, followed all of our legal aspects of the college there. Okay. So this page definitely is going to pay for you to be familiar with, isn't it? So this is the process that the college goes through upon receipt of a complaint. So the 2 methods we have for receiving a complaint are either written, so somebody type an email or write out a letter or something like that, send it to the complaints director or a member of the college who will forward it to the complaints director, and that will detail the the aspects of the complaint, contact information, that kind of stuff. Now, a complaint can be made about any current member of the college or somebody who's been a member within the last 2 years. So let's say you do something unprofessional and you go, oh, well, I don't want to be held accountable for that. I'll just drop my membership. Well, we can still take a look at you for up to 2 years from when you terminated your registration. Okay. Now, there can also be non-written complaints, so verbal, I guess, is kind of what we go with there. So, for instance, if a member of the college or the complaints director was to hear something that made them think that a complaint should be initiated, they could use that as enough information. Okay, so it could be rumor, gossip, that kind of stuff, and then they'd take a look at it. Now, the time limit for the complaints director to give a notice to the complainant is only 30 days. Okay? So if you make a complaint about somebody, you've got a month before the complaint director has to reply to you. And there's lots of different ways to deal with the complaint. So the complaints director can encourage the 2 parties to resolve the complaint between themselves. They can attempt to resolve the complaint themselves, or they can take the matter to the alternative complaints resolution process. They can also request an expert assess the situation. They could personally conduct an investigation or get somebody else to conduct an investigation, or they could dismiss the complaint. Now, if the complaints director feels that there is insufficient information, no evidence, or that the complaint is frivolous or vexatious, they can just dismiss the complaint. So it's not like every time somebody says, so-and-so messed up, you're going to have a complaint brought to you. Okay. So the alternative complaint resolution process is basically a mediation process that people are able to give and receive information and looking for, how we're actually going to settle a complaint. And you should also be familiar with the steps in the investigation process. So if you're an investigator, what are your duties? What can you actually do? What is your role in the investigation? So it's important to know that if you're the investigator, you are not making a decision about whether that complaint is frivolous or vexatious or valid. You are merely gathering information, talking to the complainant and the member of the college, and making or just summary reports, that kind of stuff. Okay, so we'll leave this with you, and again we'll be taking a look at that with Chanel in her March 6th study session, a little bit more in depth there. All right, now the continuing competency program for the college, you should have a good understanding of what its purpose is. So it's to keep you educated and continue your learning there. And you should be looking to see the different ways that you can get continuing competency hours. So today, if we attend the study session, you should be looking into what area you get to actually claim hours and how those hours are claimed. So we're just using the link here to navigate over to the college's continuing competency programs webpage. And if you take a look at this, your requirements, hint, you should know this, 75 hours per reporting period, which is a year. Okay, our reporting period goes from October 1st until September 30th. Now, a reporting period is, it's 3 years. Now, it looks at the current reporting year, which is the 1 year, and the past 2 years as well. So if you guys are just new to the college, you only have 1 year. Now, so 75 hours over 3 years. Of those 75, 45 can be Category 1, which is structured learning. So for most of us, that's kind of what we look for, where we're going to be getting most of our continuing competency hours. So if you look at the instruction documents here, okay, because remember it goes over the past few years, then it will tell you what you claim and in what area and all of that fun stuff. Okay, so we're going to click on the 2013 document. This is the one that will be relevant for your guys' exam. You can see it's broken down into Category 1, Category 2, and Category 3. 3 different categories. Now, each category is broken into a number of areas, and Area 1 of Category 1, yay, is the professional exam. So you are going to get to claim hours, and you have to know how to claim them. Now, when you enter things in online, you just kind of enter the number of hours you were involved in that task. You have to take out any time for breaks, like lunch, big breaks, and you can include travel time or something like that. But for anything in Category 1, then 1 hour of activity time is going to be 1 hour of continuing competency time. So if we're here in the study session for 2 hours, then we get 2 hours of continuing competency time. Okay, so you get to claim for the study session 1 hour per hour of instruction, but you only get that for 1 study session per year. Okay, so it's pretty much up to 2 hours there. You also get to claim the time it took you to write the professional exam. So it's we'll kind of record how much time you were in there for, and that's going to we'll forward that to the Continuing Competency Committee, and you can claim it. Okay, and of course you can take up to 25 hours of self-study for the exam. Now, do note that those 25 hours of study can only be taken for the year that you successfully write the exam. Okay, so if you don't pass this year, then you don't get to claim those hours this year. Again, it's up to you to enter these hours in your continuing competency tracker online there. Okay. Area 2 is structured learning. So it looks at post-secondary courses, if you're taking something from Education Online or doing a course for work. a lot of these are going to be included. So there's some examples of acceptable entries. And with a lot of the common courses, when you go into the continuing competency online system, you'll actually see that they're already in there. So it's pretty easy for you to be able to pick out what's acceptable and what's not. If something that's unacceptable might be a how-to course on crafting, sports lessons, judging a science fair, or school talks. School talks would fall under a different category, actually. Okay. Area 3 is structured learning, self-study, or challenging an exam. Okay. Now, category 2 is vocational enhancement. So you do actually get to claim some hours for being employed or doing certain things through your job. So conducting a field tour or doing some time in a trade fair. If you're maintaining your legislative knowledge. So I don't know, for myself, I guess I'm a bit of a geek. I spent like an hour yesterday reading about the changes to the Navigable Waters Protection Act and why they've been done. You know, I can claim that. And Area 3 is for sponsorship and mentorship. So right now you guys might either have a sponsor or a mentor, and they're going to be helping you through your process of moving from FTT to RFT. What else? There's a big process there. I'll let Chanel address that later. And our third category is for professional contributions. So if you're teaching other people or if you're doing something that's going to become published, you can claim some hours for that. Okay. Oh, also, if you're on the committee, like myself, the exam committee, I get to claim hours for doing that. So I get to claim, you know, all the lovely hours I did in the council, or compose this beautiful study session, stuff like that. Okay, so again, familiar, or you should be familiar with it because it's on the exam and because you are going to have to do this every year until you retire. I'm going to close like 9 or 10 white pages here. Okay, so just running back to page 42 of the exam presentation. I'm actually going to pause the recording here. It is 10 minutes after 11. We're just going to take a quick 10-minute break to allow me to hydrate, and we'll start back in 10. Okay, so we're going to take a look at some of those other acts and regulations. So remember, these are the other 14 questions there. Okay, so Forest Act, you definitely want to be familiar with this thing because it's going to have an influence on your ability to operate as a professional here, and definitely a good question on the exam. There are a bunch of different parts in the Forest Act, so it's going to take for you to be familiar with what the Forest Act actually does, you know, how it works, how it protects the forest in Alberta, who gives power to, what happens when you do something wrong, so knowing what different types of offenses are available and how it enables power and all kinds of stuff there. Okay, so part 1 with administration discusses the actual authority under the Forest Act and defines unauthorized use and harvest. So if somebody's going out and cutting down the public resource and using it for personal gain, what happens? Part 2 is Crown Timber. So it talks about our timber tenure system, which we're going to elaborate on later, and provides the linkages to other acts. And of course, it sets aside the requirements for cutting and transporting timber products. So if you've ever heard of a TM9, part of that. Part 2.1 is the Alberta Land Stewardship Act, regional plans. So it shows what the relationship is to those. And the last part is what offenses and penalties are. So if you're doing something illegal, then what can happen to you. And of course, talks about public disclosure as well. So if you are doing something major, you're probably going to see that published in a paper. Please know that in Australia, if you are caught driving drunk, they publish your name in the local paper so that all of your neighbors can razz you. That's awesome. All right, let's talk about timber management. So remember, the Act empowers the timber management regulations. It's divided into 7 different parts there. So looking at each of the 7 parts. And again, the little book thing here is the link to the Queen's Printer page there. Now with this one, I think I put it in on a later slide. There's a better English definition or explanation, I guess, on the Alberta ESRD website. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, oh, there it is. So forest management, you should be able to explain the relationship between acts and regulations. So the Forest Act enables forest management in terms of legal authorities and powers, where the timber management regulations and policies are used to implement and administer the Forest Act. Okay, so one says what authority that it actually has, and the other one says how they're going to enforce that. Okay, you should also know what the forest management directives are, and do keep in mind that they don't supersede legislation. So they're just like trying to clarify and describe how we actually do things on the ground. So if we're taking a look at timber scaling or something like that, how do we, what do we need to do to scale a load of timber? Right. So we're going to go to the ESRD website for forest management, and so lots of information on this website here. You can see that the ground rules, the timber scaling program, different manuals are here as well, linkages. So this is also a good page for you guys to throw a favorites on so that you get nice and familiar with it. Okay. And there's also some information about forest tenure and forest business here as well. So we're going to click on the beautiful forest tenure tab there. Forest tenure is wonderful for that because look at the table. So this is the differences between the main types of forest tenure in Alberta. If you went to NAIT, you probably remember this. So it says, if you have an FMA, how many years do you have to renew it? How long is it actually good for? What type is it based on? So an FMA is based on area and how much area or how much volume. The method of allocation, use, whether it's commercial or non-commercial would be personal there. And what you actually have rights to. So in Fort McMurray, it's always a big thing that oil companies are like, you can't come here because we own the land. I'm like, we don't own the land. You just have rights to the oil under the land. And same thing for forestry. We don't own the land. We just have rights to the timber that grows on the land. So you have to play fairly with all of the other users on the landscape, whether that's going to be oil companies or recreators or something like that. Who's responsible for doing the forest management planning, whether they have to submit annual operating plans, whether they have to pay for forest protection, whether they actually have to reforest, and if there's a public consultation requirement or not. So this aligns everything from the big FMA to a forest products tag. So if you're looking to harvest Christmas trees, you're supposed to get a forest products tag that allows you to harvest up to 5 cubic meters, non-commercial. So you don't sell the tree or anything. You just get to stick it in your living room, and you don't have to replant it or pay for forest protection or anything like that. So definitely it's going to be good for you guys to be familiar with this table. So understanding, when you actually have to go and get a type of tenure, what your responsibilities are under that tenure. So, and again, you get to this one by going to the forest management page of the ESRD and clicking on forest tenure, and then the table is differences between main types of forest tenure in Alberta. I think it's on a reading list as well, a direct link to it. Okay, back to our PowerPoint here on page 48. There we go, same thing there. So just talking about the different aspects of the tenure system. So be familiar with them, know that table, and do well. So in each one, know the length of term, reforestation requirements, what authority gives them to harvest, what types of volumes that they're actually allowed to harvest, that kind of stuff. And, oh, sorry, there's a link to that document right there on page 49. Okay. Now, reforestation, we're just going to look at the Reforestation Standards of Alberta, which is the RSA manual. And again, it's in a broad sense. We're not looking for specifics, like how many centimeters does a tree have to grow or something like that. But it does set out what's required for establishment and performance surveys, and it describes the purpose of the regen standards. So, you know, we actually have to maintain this forest resource. It's supposed to be a renewable thing. So you should know what reforestation obligations a company has, and understand that it's Part 6, Division 2 of the TM regs, so that's how it's empowered. And you should know why we actually have regen standards in Alberta. Now, it can be hard to get the link to this, so there's just a little note here. You just go to this webpage, which is the management guide, the manual's guidelines there, and then you'll have to click on the Reforestation Standard of Alberta link, and then RSA 2012-13 final. You can change that one a lot, so hopefully that's still current. So know what your timelines are for establishment and performance surveys, and what applicable or openings that they actually apply to, so you know, what stratas, stuff like that. And look to see what types of variables are measured. So we're looking at, you know, growth or competition or whatever. Okay, page 52 of the PowerPoint talks about the operating ground rules. So this is under the timber harvest planning and operating ground rules. And this looks at important management purposes. So how are we actually protecting that resource through our practices? It defines operating and planning purposes, and it looks at our standards for harvesting timber, road development, reforestation. So, you know, it actually says specific things like how big a cut block can be, or how close a road can be to a road. I'm sorry, a road can be to a river, something like that. Or how many roads you're allowed to have in a block, you know, how much area can be road. It is comprised of 12 sections, and each subsection has an objective, so you should know what the objectives are of the operating ground rules. So that's the testable type stuff there. Okay. In this specifically, very popular question, and for a lot of us that do layout, something we're probably pretty familiar with. Section 6 is about watershed protection. So know that the purpose is to manage the implications of timber operation on water quality, quantity, and flow regime. And it has that table that says, you know, what the different types of water courses are classified to. And it sets out our standards for operating close to that water or in those riparian areas there. So definitely a good table that you want to be familiar with in the AOGR. Also in watershed management, you should be familiar with the Water Act. So there's just a link here. Also to the ministerial regs, offenses, and penalties. And the Code of Practice for Watercourse Crossings. So please remember, Code of Practice, this is not legislation. Again, it's a document that's interpretation on how we actually practice forestry. So do watch out for that on the exam there. So in this one, you would know the classes of the water bodies, what types of crossings are appropriate for each of those water bodies. And this is when we're looking at relating to members of other professions. So know what an aquatic environmental specialist is allowed to do, and an engineering technical specialist as well. So who's determining some answers for us here? Now our the date, February 20th, I believe is the date, study session. It is going to focus a lot on timber operations, watershed management. So we'll be talking more about that in depth. Bed and shore. So you should know who is able to determine the boundary of bed and shore. So again, looking at what other professions and our overlap with them. And identify what's a flowing watercourse and a standing water body. So again, that kind of ties in with the Public Lands Act. And we have a summary document for Lake Shores there, just to help you become more familiar with it. Match your bed and shore activity with the applicable act. So if you're going to be doing dredging or vegetation management, if you've got cattle grazing nearby, or if you're doing an activity that would cause erosion, you know what acts are applicable for you. And of course, as it relates to the Alberta wetland policy, if anybody's looking at reclamation, again, this might be, you know, bed and shore really ties in with that one a lot. So it might be a good question for you to focus on. All right, for the fire people, incident command system. So know what the incident command system was designed to do. Of course, I'm not a fire person, but as far as I understand, the definition is that it's a flexible management system that can be used on pretty much any incident. So you're able to expand and contract the the management structure there, so that we have good incident management. Here we go. Okay. Now it also looks at responsibilities of the different positions of the general staff and the command staff as well. So for ICS, I think that we just look at ICS level 100, and that's what this document here is linking to. So for those people who are in fire protection, they might be familiar with this already, but of course, you've got to have your official terminology there. Okay. Also know what resource management is, what unified command is, how information flows around there. You should know what do we call that? Span of control is as well, and what an incident action plan is, when we actually use it, and some of that type of information. Okay. Page 60 is talking about forest protection, so that's the Forest and Prairie Protection Act, which of course has two different regulations. So again, know what the act is supposed to do, and understand what the two regulations are, and what they kind of, so they're each a little bit different authority there. If you're doing fire control plans, again, that can also be a question here as well. So looking to bring together different resource players on the land base, and providing forest protection there. And I think we've got a link to the wildfire prevention page here. So looking at fire smarts and landscape assessment. Trying to think what the actual exam questions look like. Yeah. All right. Detection program there. So describe the different detection agents that we have in play, how they're used, when they're used, that kind of stuff. What happens when we have shortfalls with those detection agents as well. What situations they're actually applicable to, and know what the objective of wildfire detection systems are. And of course, there's the spatial fire management system. So it's used for pre-suppression preparedness. So looking what we actually use it for, other uses as well. And it's basically used for the study of fire there. And describe three purposes of the visible mapping application. So again, that's looking to see what happens when we have shortfalls in the fire detection system there. So determining like how we're going to do our area patrols, or where we need to have new lookouts, something like that. All right. Moving on to federal legislation. We are probably not going to have a question on the Navigable Waters Protection Act, simply because it is a hot political issue right now, and it could undergo some fluctuation here. So you're only going to be asked, or if this question is on there, it's only going to be in the broadest sense. For instance, like when you need to reference to the Navigable Waters Act, or what its authority outlines, but there won't be anything too specific on that. Also, the Federal Fisheries Act there, and you should be able to describe what both of those acts are defined for, but what the differences are between the two of them. Oh, I'm sorry, should have taken that out. So, as you know, as of December, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act is repealed. So I guess you don't have to know what that one's for anymore. But you should know the Migratory Birds Convention Act, so what it actually does with protecting migratory birds in their nesting areas. A favorite question for a lot of people is the mountain pine beetle. So looking at the Alberta Mountain Pine Beetle Action Plan, so how we're recognizing that a tree or a stand is affected, what types of suppression activities that we try to use for limiting infestation, that kind of stuff. There's also a possible question on range management, so know the different types of dispositions available, grazing leases, licenses, and permits. And of course, the integration of grazing and timber activities directive, very important again for multiple users on the land base there. Know what a disposition holder's rights are, know what your rights are as an industry member. Again, link for the Public Lands Act because we've got a lot of interrelationship between these. Okay. Biodiversity, the Canadian Biodiversity Strategy, so know what the goals of the strategy are, what Special Places was designed to do, and know what Forest Care's place is in the strategy as well. And just in case you're not familiar with it, Forest Care is similar to like an ISO type certification. So it just says that you're operating sustainably. For a wildlife question, we look at the Boreal Caribou Committee Strategic Plan and Industrial Guidelines. So caribou, we see them lots and lots in the news, looking at their industry's effect on their habitat, the relationship between predator and prey, and of course what disturbances are doing to caribou as well. You should know that caribou are an indicator species and their general population levels have a very big indicator of how our ecosites are doing. All right, also for wildlife, know your Section 7 of your ground rules because that's habitat management. So, I'm sorry, I think that's supposed to say harvest area design, layout considerations, looking at line of sight, and why do we have stand retention around nests, that kind of stuff. And what happens when there's specific wildlife in an area, like can we actually harvest it? Do we need to bring in a specialist to look at the impact of harvesting activities there? Okay, for you land use people, we've got some industrial development stuff here. So looking at different authorizations, that's the enhanced approval process, the geophysical field reports, so the TFAs, temporary field authorizations. So there's a link here to all of the different forms. So you need to know the intent, why we actually have these forms set out. And I'm hoping to get somebody to put a study session together on this as well. So if anybody feels confident in this, or if they know someone who is confident in this, please forward me that information and I will pass to them. Anybody who attended the last AGM, we had a big presentation about the enhanced approval process, so what it's actually used for there, and I think that one was kind of structured towards pipeline applications there. So how we've brought this EAP process into play, looking at the different disposition types underneath it. And for reclamation, that's the Alberta Public Lands Operational Handbook. So you should know what the objective of reclamation is, different definitions around that as well, and what specified land is. So do you know how it relates to the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act and Conservation and Reclamation regulation there. Okay. The Alberta Land Stewardship Act, it's relatively new legislation, and it created the authority for all of these regional plans, divided Alberta up into 7 different regions. So you should kind of know what the Act does, which is stated in these following points here. And you should know that It affected 25 legislative acts, so it made amendments to them so that it could actually come into power. So you should know that the purpose of the act was to bring players together on the land base and provide administrative tools to enable the government to direct planning. Okay? So do you know that the Alberta Land Stewardship Act created the legal authority for the land use framework? Know what the 7 strategies of the land use framework are there. So Aboriginal consultation or the creation of the land use secretariat are a couple of major things. Okay. There's the link to the Alberta Land Use Stewardship Act and the Land Use Framework. I just put English there. Okay, so that's the subject matter that you're going to be seeing on the exam. Again, we have 2 study sessions booked, and we're looking to add in more. So if you know someone that is competent in one of those areas, you'd like to see more about it, again, just forward me their information, and I will see if we can work on putting together a study session. Okay. All right. Now, it's a boggling amount of information. So our next few slides are going to talk about how you will actually prepare for the exam. Again, keep in mind it's 9 weeks away, so you guys are your crunch time now. There's enough information that if you were to study one subject every week, you're you're looking at passing, right? So if you guys go a couple weeks without doing anything, you're definitely getting into a crisis point, but you're putting yourself under a lot of pressure if you're not getting yourself on a study timeline right away. Okay. So again, the next online study session is February 20th. It's in the evening to allow people to study from home. It'll kind of be the same as this, so it'll be recorded online. If you don't have a chance to watch it, that's fine. You can always review it later. And of course, the documents will all be emailed out prior to the session. That session is going to cover watershed management and ground rules for harvesting. So I'm more familiar with those, so I can talk more about them. Now, Chanel is going to be doing a session focusing more on the college, and that's March 6th at 10 a.m. Same thing, online, documents available prior to the session. And if we add anything more, again, we'll be communicating with you through email. So it's just meant to help keep you on track with your study timelines, make sure you guys aren't putting it all at the end where you're cramming. So the next slides are just a guideline for you. We've taken some stuff from, studying from the University of Alberta exam preparation, that kind of stuff, just to help you stay on track. The first thing, I didn't change that, is setting yourself a timeline. So the exam is 9 weeks away, which is a decent amount of time to become adequately prepared. There's about 17 different summary documents, so if you pick 11 or 12 of those, you've got a little more than one per week. And you should be actually scheduling in time, so you can take 10 minutes today and figure out in your schedule where you can take out some chunks of time. For those of you who will be studying primarily at work, I definitely recommend approaching your supervisor and asking them for study time. A lot of employers are very amenable to this, so I don't think it's something that you have to do all on your own. It is a benefit to your employer to have a regulated member with professional sign-up on staff, so a lot of them are very supportive. Okay, some of the things you should be doing are printing off the summary documents, the study documents, reviewing the associated legislation, and completing the study documents. And participating in any study groups or further study sessions. Even if it's something that you're going to review right away, if you hit the study session about that later on, it's probably a good review for you just to make sure that information is solidified in your brain. Before the exam, you should also be physically prepared to write the exam. A lot of people kind of discount the benefits of getting a decent night's sleep. So please don't try to cram, get yourself a night 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep the night prior to the exam. And studies have shown that if you get REM sleep on the material, then you'll actually be able to regurgitate it onto a piece of paper. Okay. Do try to keep a regular schedule as the exam time approaches. So in the week ahead of time, don't be staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning or anything like that. And of course, watch your caffeine and sugar levels because they also have an adverse effect on sleep. Again, if you don't get good sleep, then you're not going to be able to get that information down on a piece of paper. Okay. Something I kind of want to add in with this is, now the exam starts at 9 in Edmonton, so you are expected to be there, prior to the 9 o'clock. That you get, you're going to get information. Now, I do understand that you may not be familiar with the city. It could be stressful driving. We could have bad weather as well because it is March. So if you do not arrive on time, don't panic. Don't get yourself all stressed out. We will make an exception for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not supposed to set a goal for arriving on time. It just means that I don't want traffic to be, or snow to be the thing that stands between you and getting your RPFT status, right? Some writing tips that were taken from the U of A's 2006 effective exam writing tips. So at the beginning of the exam, your proctor is going to go through the instructions with you. Make sure that you follow them, you read them yourself. If you have any questions or anything like that, ask them right away so that you know how the exam works. Now, one of the big things that you're going to see in this exam is that only the first 10 questions that you answer are going to be marked. Remember how we have 16 questions? There's going to be a portion on the front of the exam that's going to say, I want these questions marked for my final mark. Okay, so if you answered questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, I don't know, I think how many numbers that counts to. I guess if you answer questions 1 through 10, you'll actually check that off. Now, if you answer questions 1 through 11, we're only going to mark the first 10 that we come to, okay? So if you answered number 3 really weakly and number 11 really strongly, that's not going to help you out, okay? We don't just pick the ones you have the best answers on, we just pick the first 10. Okay, so make sure that you guys understand that instruction because it's kind of difficult to explain. Now, budget your time accordingly. Well, you're probably going to think, oh, I had 10 questions, 4 hours, I can do the math. Well, those questions are all in different ways. So if it's a short answer question, it's going to take longer to write than a multiple choice or matching type question. So read through the questions right at the beginning of the exam. I would suggest, separating them out. So you put your ones that you definitely want to write in one pile, but the ones you don't want to write in another pile, maybe some maybes in a third pile, something like that. Okay. Attack each question systematically. So read every question carefully, underline keywords, make sure you read the entire question there so that you have all of the information. And every question that you decide to write, you're going to make sure you write every response to every portion of that question. Okay, so please don't leave blanks. I mean, we give partial marks for all kinds of stuff, so try to come up with something. Even if it's a multiple choice or true and false answer type question, if you're able to put a sentence in there that provides some clarification to your answer, that's fine as well. We do also take consideration for things like that. Now, there are a few questions on the exam where you're going to put a check mark in a chart. If you put too many check marks in there, you're not going to, the marks will be taken off, okay? You can't just fill out the check mark in every box kind of thing, right? So that would be a penalty for guessing. If there's no penalty for guessing, please make sure you guess. Put something down, information to clarify your answer. It's going to help you out. You have 4 hours to do this in, so that's a lot and lots of time. Number 5, if you draw a blank, don't panic, okay? You're going to have some time in the exam to stand up, have a little stretch break. Chanel, you might be able to clarify for me as well. I think we've got water and some snackies coming to the room. So, step away from it for a second, ask yourself what you need to know to answer the question, and then start writing down your thoughts. Now, you'll be provided with scrap paper in the exam. It's like official scrap paper, so you're not allowed to take it with you or anything like that. But, you know, write your thoughts down. Try to focus on the task at hand instead of your personal feelings about it. Okay. When you have answered your 10 questions, make sure that you check them off on that little chart on the front of the exam so that you and your exam marker know which 10 questions you're going to count towards your exam. And then go through those 10 questions carefully. Make sure that you make any corrections that you can see, elaborate on information as well. Don't change anything unless you're 100% sure that it's wrong. We all know that with multiple choice, usually your first answer is your best answer. So, you know, make sure you've got an answer in every blank, unless it's one of those guessing ones. Yeah. And of course, exam tip number 7 is stay until the end. So don't leave until, you know, you have to leave at the 4-hour deadline there. I would even suggest once you think you've finished the exam, just sit quietly for 10 or 15 minutes. You would be surprised at how much information surfaces. And we've probably all done that. We've written an exam, we've handed it in, we've walked out, and we've gone, oh, right, oh, that's how that works. Okay, so allow yourself that time. Okay, good question. How hard is it going to be? So big thing for you guys to keep in mind is that the study sessions, the summary materials, the exam questions themselves, they're all composed by members of the college. So they're industry members, government employees. A lot of them are done by people who've written the exams, so they're familiar with the material. So a couple of our summary documents were just updated this year by people who wrote in the fall. Okay. None of the questions were composed by lawyers or professional educators or people who were trying to make you fail. Okay, so there's no trick questions on there or anything like that. It's just plain English. We do a lot of analyzing of these questions to make sure that if they seem to be confusing or if people haven't been able to answer an appropriate response in the past, we change the question, right? Also keep in mind that the exams are marked by your peers, so they're going to do their best to interpret your understanding of the material. So I'm not saying, you know, write down a whole bunch of gobbledygook on it, but we will look for a variety of ways to give you points on your exam. Okay. Where can you go for some extra help between now and exam time? You can contact me. There's my information there. There's also some industry peers. Tracy Parkinson has been a big help in the past. I'm not sure if she's still on leave, but you can always reach out to her. She's got a number of study aids as well. Do keep in mind that Chanel, the registrar for the college, is going to write this exam as well, so she's going to be in the exact same boat as you. Please feel free to contact people who wrote previously. We'll try to get some of that contact information out with those summary documents, so you've got somebody to help you out. You know, ask for people's study notes, ask for their flashcards. There's lots of information out there, and it's pretty amazing how much effort people have put into studying in the past. So, you know, use that resource. Don't start yourself all the way at the beginning as well. Okay. Don't forget there's the CAPFT Facebook group, so you might find some helpful friends through that. Don't forget to check the CAPFT website for any updated material. Look for your emails as well. Set yourself a study schedule. The study timeline is going to start next Friday. I think it's the 25th there. And then every Friday you'll receive some study documents with sample questions. I do recommend that you guys form a study group. With the exception of one person, we've got, two people. We have most everybody in a town where somebody else is writing. So we can try to put you in contact with that person. You guys can get together and study as well. And of course, don't forget the age-old method of creating flashcards and study notes. Studies show that if you write it down, you're going to retain it a lot better than if you just read it. Oh, one thought I wanted to add to that, please don't print off all of the acts and regs. Like, don't hit that, the reading list and just start printing. It's a ridiculous amount of information. You would fill, I don't know, 15 or 16 3-inch binders. So please don't just kill a tree in your studying. It's hopefully not what we're here for. Use the online resource or ask somebody if they've got a copy of it. Download the PDF from the Queen printer, you know, choose something else. The next couple of slides are just a couple maps for Edmonton. So if you are going to write at the main campus in Edmonton, how you get there. Now, if you look at the Yellowhead Trail there, they are restricting exits off of the Yellowhead Trail. I think it's at 127th Street, but I'm not positive. So allow yourself lots and lots of time to get there. Do know that you are going to have to park in the parking lot next to the building. Okay, so the building is V. It's right on 118th Avenue. Zone C and Zone B right to the west of it are the available parking lots. It is pay parking, so bring yourself some change so you don't get a ticket, anything like that. I would suggest you aim to arrive at least half an hour before the exam just to give yourself some cool down time before you head into there. Now, the room that we typically use is B332, which if you went to NAIT is the GIS room. If we make any changes to this, you'll be notified. As soon as we know, we'll get you maps and all of that stuff. Now, for those of you who are going to be writing in different areas, so I've got somebody that already said they want to write in Calgary. We'll try to set you up with a proctor. So again, look for that email that's coming in the next couple of days, and we'll try to get you set up with that as well. Okay, and I think that's all I have for you. Does anyone have any questions? You can either type them into the chat or you can unmute yourself and say them aloud. I know someone wants to ask a question. Someone must. Everyone want to meet my dog? Oh, come here. Come here. She was so good. There. Say hello to Bubbles.
Hi, Bubbles.
You wag your tail there. All right. Chanel is clarifying that our rental agreement is for V322. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I put 332, but it's supposed to be V322. And we'll have signs up on the doors as well. All right. So I will let you guys go. Again, if you need any help, please feel free to contact me by email. And otherwise, I will see you guys in March.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome. Have fun.